Alright, Chapter 4, Section 6, Tanker Operations. General. In order to prepare the shore activity with the receipt of the fuel cargo with the tanker, arrival, the time, with the kind, with the amount, with the petroleum product, with the receipt of the shore, with the should be known with advance, and so all shore arrangement of the cargo received that can be made with advance for docking time when they issued in fuel oil with the military fuel depot, will include with loading of the tanker with the most off with the fuel naval vessel with the loading, however, the barge with the pier with the wharf and the fuel naval with the vessel with the C with the described in the handbook, C with the chapter 7 of the safety precaution applicable to the operation. Receiving operation, the supervisor should prepare with the post written with the order of the designate the following: berth to be used, pipelines to be used, the number of side of the hose to be connected to the tanks and ship with the cargo received, the pumps to be operated, number of the sample, the location where the sample is to be taken, test required, location of the blinds if used, line cleaning and displacement. The pier should be prepared with the receipt of the ship of the supply with the making an inspection with all the emergency equipment, as well as the tools of the regular equipment to be used with the responsibility of safe docking with the rest of the within the ship of the shore personnel assist. And everywhere possible, the supervisor shall not all allow the vessel to dock if any serious or unusual hazards are apparent with the berthing position of the ship that should be with the spot with the wharf man with the proper the pier location, so that the hose connection can be made probably without delay with the corners of the previous or with the range of the terminus of each more lining at the bollard and belie pile should be manila with a synthetic fiber with live that can be cut in the emergency with unless it means with emergency relief the provided. Recommend that no ship to be allowed to dock more adjacent within 200 feet of another ship within transfer bulk cargo. Except for the arrangement of the agree with the depot officer of the ship, the transferring of the cargo with the pier of the hazard cargo transfer should be interrupted. The second ship, the safety dock or moored in a particular way that always hazard with the flammable vapor mixture with aware the gasoline low flash jet fuel is being loaded and vapors released on the deck level. Alright, gangways. Immediately after docking the ship with the rig a gangway on the safe action for the petroleum inspector for the other personnel of the movement of the ship that does not permit the special equipment that may be used instead of the tends adjusting of the gateway shall be provided with the ship. The requirement of the single apply with particularly with the tankers and large ships where sample engagers are taken with the witness and shore personnel of the ship. The signal system used at the pier to regulate with the operation effective with the transfer of the product should be tested. 2. Communication of the other faculties. Shipper officers should be informed of the facility of the provide with the fire protection of the pier with the service available for the ship's use and such of the power, water, steam, and the case if necessary to eliminate the boiler gallery fires of the ship entirely. A portable telephone is approved the type of the carried board and ship. They will increase the speed with the safety of the communications. 3. Sampling and testing before unloading. Before unloading operations start with the quality personnel of the military petroleum inspector with the shall be in the sample for the ship tanks in accordance with the established procedure. Except in an emergency, all of the arrangement of the inspector shall be made with an advance for the order, but there will be no lost time. The shore gauger should be familiar with the technique with the drawing sample, the gauging of the ship tanks. Certification readiness when the ship is the other with the USS ships arrive with the discharge cargo of the ship. The master must serve the depot with a certificate of readiness for discharge at the time of the calculate for the demurrage of the charge of the established such of the charges are permitted the contact when and whether the demurrage is involved or not for any of the reason impossible to start with unloading the ship after arrival to the depot and commanding officer shall be notified with the circumstances. 5. Line filling of the sample gauging prior to unloading. The supervisor will ask over the shipper to offer the tank form to witness the gauge if the length of the verification privilege have been waived. The ship officer should be ordinarily invited to inspect the diagram of the lines with the action to assure himself that the valve of the blinds are properly with the set in the corners of the diagram and that he will not necessarily perform the verification himself. Duties of ship personnel. Personnel are required to host handle with the other operation on board the ship that are required with the standardized ship of the naval requirements. It is generally responsibility of the ship personnel to perform actual connecting with the disconnecting the hose aboard ship except for the responsibility safe completion of the duty in order and apply the safe operating procedure of the duty. Supervisor shall inspect the conditions ashore and aboard ship before operations started. During the entire time of the bulk transfer, there will be normally at least one deck of the officer with one engineer officer with the duty aboard a ship. They obviously with the rule of the applicable larger ship that is modified with the suit of the actual personnel handling the receipt for the small craft. All right, hose and watch. When cargo is discharged ashore with a customary ship that provide with a hose to watch aboard the ship that stand by at all the time for the purpose of the watching of the strain with the shafting of the hose with the close of the ship with the valves. Unloading operation prior to unloading, supervisor shall receive the ship of the officer for the provide copies of the test of the seal with the sample of the oil taken in loading and testing. Alright, 9. Assignment of the personnel ashore. The supervisor shall designate the assignment of the regular shore personnel, but if needed, will arrange for the extra labor and hand line with the cargo hoods, or they will arrange for the special assistance of the tug or pilot to, if required, to dock and release the ship from the pier. All the gear necessary for the docking, the shipping and receiving the cargo ready for the use on the pier. 10. Filling the line. Before the ship at the dock with the pier pipelines should be filled with it is impossible to obtain an accurate measurement of the product with the receiver the issued unless the lines are completely full or completely empty. The exact line of the volume known in the case of the emergency of the permissible withdrawal of the line between the opening and the closing of the gauge, approximately volume corrections are made. R11. The rigging inspection of the hose procedure for the shore with the governed by the standard practice before the ship attack with the designated the hose to be shown with the examine the raised position of the hose with the support, and if in use the line of the wharf line connection shall be removed and the short end of the hose bolted securely to the fuel line and riser. Tank ship the fuel barge of the vessels usually carry hose in order to save time on the pier hose, and it should be used whenever possible. Enough hose should be used to allow with a reasonable amount of the slack to care for the local condition of the tide variation, weather and layout. Too much of it may be undesirable and will retard the oil flow. The more cargo hose is strong and reliable the product, but it will not stand long continued abuse. Spills and fires are more serious of the nature foul of the ruptures of the hose, and therefore all personnel concerned should understand how necessary it is to safe hose and handling practice. The hose connection should be made up with the proper gaskets, and a full complete complement of bolts. Metal ships will be provided with American standard flanges 4 to 6 to 8 inches for the hose attachment. These present are no problem. Some ships, however, the way any other flange, either with the floor material with the nonus drilling, requiring an adapter for the C-clamp. Older ships may use the same drilling with a 4-inch to 6-inch flange. For example, a 6 3/4 inch bolt with a 10-inch circle. The depot should have a set of straight reducing adapters, spools on hand to cover all the normal requirements. Several set of the bolts, preferably of alloy steel with no case wire, less for the normal complement with the bolts is employed with less than 4 bolts and length. The cam lock of the type of the flame with the C-clamps are used. C-clamps used if then the most verified either with the calculation adequate strength that must be supplemented by at least 2 bolts, preventing the flange from sliding or twisting. C-clamps may be knocked off with emergency, but with this hazardous operation with the conditions may require the disconnecting during an emergency. Patent and quick acting clamping device such as those not available may be used. Alright, 12. Your hose handling gear. The hose handling gear with a fixed diameter should be provided with a flexible, especially with a hose with 4 inches of the diameter pier for the use of the general cargo of the fixed diameter gear, but may be permit with such a location small movable hose. Cranes may be used with the provision of the proper hose gearing is most cases for the responsibility of the shore organization. Hose handling gear is not by the means of the saving the manpower, but the need of the support of the hose during the entire time the transfer and slacking of the lifting of the hose from the shipment of the drift of the cub of the wind of the change of the tide. 13. Serve the connection. Connecting with the hose of the marking and making electronic burn with the serve the connection with the wind with the full water, steam, and electrical may proceed concurrently with the necessary gauging and sampling if then for logical reason for the ship the crew is unable to make up its own connection. Shore crew with the arrangement of the agreement with the connection from the ship crew with the pressure gauges should then be installed with the pier risers and pipeline when the gauging and sampling operations are complete with the preliminary examination. Samples indicate with the cargo in order the pump house tank farm personnel while being notified with the ship ready for the unload and standby final valve setting with the ready for the booster pumps are required. 14. Notification starting and unloading. The ship officer should formally notify the supervisor that the ship is ready for the discharge, and the supervisor in turn should inform the ship commander's officer of the depot that it is ready for the receiver. The commander's officer of the ship at the depot maintenance commanding officer may require either both of these notifications be in writing of the pier valve. Valve is first opened the ship line with it, then opening the pumps are started. If if the pumps are already started by bypass valve with the connection positive displacement. Pumps are already started with gradually with the close of the central plug. Pumps may be started before the ship valve that are open, and flow may be controlled simply by the opening of the ship line valve. The pressure should be built up gradually with the reserve of the gauge on the ship piers carefully observed. 15. Unloading speed. The wharfman will be communicate with the pump valve of the tank farm personnel with the secret sheave and that the booster pump of the arm properly that they are entering in the correct tank with the depth of the liquid heel with the receiver of the tank with the sufficient if they may request the permission to order maximum rate of flow. The wharfman may order a full rate of flow that the pressure will be raised allowable to work the pressure on the hose to whatever the lesser value of the pump can provide. The unloading should be without delay of the ship's time, and these valuable safety rules must be observed. 16. Check gauging the line patrol. The systematic gauging of the shore tanks should be performed during cargo transfer, especially with the working order. The lines should be patrolled with periodically local conditions, if possible, with a hazard dictate discharge of the cargo to be stopped in the case of the large oil spill at the pier with the fire with the vessel with the pier or in the vicinity of the shorelines or in the tankage of the area. Discharge should be stopped at the appropriate approach of an electrical storm when the gasoline or jet fuel has been handling on the occasion of the storm. Such interpretation of the valve on the ship of the pier should be closed, but not immediate with the hazard of piers. Those may be left in the connection with either the ship officer or the supervisor believe that they have the potential to have the hose should be disconnected the drain and the main block of the valve with the shore closed. Changing from one tanker to car to another. Changing from the flow from one tanker to another. The tanker farm is not necessarily unusually desirable to shut down pump of the operation, such as the shutdown may not only cover the delay, but may offer the opportunity for the errors before performing in a switch of the tanks. Tank field gauger shall inform the pump out of the pier personnel of his intention designated the tanks that they are open on the line, the name of the tank, of the purpose of the opening of the tank that proposed to close. Wharfman likewise shall request the slowdown in the case of the switch or the of the surge pressure on the hose, as in the switch line tank to a higher elevation. Are changing in pump operation. The booster pump house operation shall inform the pier with the tanker farm personnel of any proposed shift in pumping operation. Pier personnel shall inform the performance advance of any proposed slowdown with change of the slump pumps and the all tank changes. The valve operation should perform slowly. The pressure will be watched during the operation. If possible, the wharfman shall be given a standby order 5 to 10 minutes before transfer rate is to change. Stop. And again started, he in turn shall inform the pump house and tank farm personnel of any anticipated changes on the pier of the board of the ship. Alright, 19. Stripping speed. Before the final slowdown with the stripping of the last of the ship of the tank with the often advisable to shut down with the booster pump and pump directly to the tank with the provide with the opposite of the static head, not to the grate, to prevent this is desirable before receipt of the cargo is fully with the complete with the tank approximately final gauge of the complete with the estimated cargo delivery or a large discrepancy may be determined and investigated before the ship sail with the procedure was suggested. Also precaution to give this accidentally leaving some of the cargo aboard ship. When striping the ship tanker, the care shall be taken to avoid the discharging unnecessarily into the shoreline upon completion of the transfer. Those shall be disconnected with the drain free from the product of the half drum of the pans being used. Catch any spillage of the oil left in the hose with the best mean with the drain with by use of the small suction proper pumps. Arrange for the draw of the oil with the hose for the discharge into the pier of the drainage tank, preferably into the pier line with itself. It is permissible to use the compressed air for the blowing of the fuel and diesel fuel out of the hose into the pier drainage system, sub tanks back to the ship. And it's not safe for the practice use of the air of the blowing of the gasoline and jet fuel. Therefore, using air with the displacement of the gasoline and low flash jet fuel shall not be permitted. When unloading a hose may be disconnected, removed from the riser flange. It should be placed at the end of the pier, closed places with both ends of the house. Those shall be stored in the shelter and shelter hose rack. Under no circumstances shall they be allowed to remain under pier nor on the pier nor on the pier of the deck. Wow. Alright, your final inspection of ship tanks. The supervisor of the company with the surface petroleum inspector is assigned to the ship. The officer of the shall inspect the ship with the tank and make certain that they are empty unless the tanks are found empty after unloading. Each tank in the compartment involved shall be examined and determine the quantity of the product remaining thereon, and which cannot be pumped ashore. It would have been impossible to get the accurate figures of the gauging estimated will be made. Figures obtained with the tank numbers involved will be made matter of record. Closing shore tank gauge. After required by the settling of the time of the allowed with the code of the gauge of the shore tank sample of the oil received, it will be concurrently taken the witness by the ship, the officer of the referee with the authorized inspector. If required, the quantity of the oil delivered into the tank with the shell be computed as much practicable after the final gauges are taken with these volume of the shell at once be corrected after the volumes are occupied with a temperature of 60 degrees Fahrenheit. With the final checking against the quantity delivered by the ship, the supply officer for the designated of the authority will sign the acknowledgement of the receipt, and the figures are in order to appear line should be drained if required. To local orders unless another receipt is issued with the file shortly. Draining pier line. Within some time of the good for the operating practice with the drain pier line will be not used in the extended period of the time. However, the left over the discretion of the supervisor and local fire chief is accepted the meaning of all line of the pier structure of the back of the first block of the valve on the shore. That draining refilling of the such line may be required a great deal of time and introduce other complications. The procedure shall be held practical limits when the success of the issue of the sample of the products is expected with the drain of pier line is not ordinary practice in active military depot with a small return line that had been installed on some of the recently constructed oil installation for the removing and displacing of the oil for the main lines of the pier. They be used for the draining of the lining, cleaning operations. Unless relieved of the expansion of the products, the ideal pipelines due to the heating of the usually direct exposure for the sun rays develop the excessive pressure. It's duty of the pier personnel to see that the pressure relief are properly installed within use of good working order. To only normally operate the relief valves when necessary to keep the pressure gauge with the aim of the fill with the most temporary idle pier lines and to observe them with frequent intervals. Our defueling means the removal of the fuel bunker with excess of the product from the ship fuel tank with the fuel returned with the submarine and other craft that shall be segregated with the quarantine with the other shore tank with the provided with the purpose of the quarantine with the harbor barge. The tank sample of the quarantine fuel shall be taken with the analyzed with determined with the quality with the disposal action of the procedure necessary to preclude the possibility of mixing contaminated fuel on the test of the product storage. Defueling the harbor barges. When necessary for the fuel of the harbor barge of the barge's tank should be inspected prior to the refilling of the test of fuel returned to the regular service. This procedure is based necessary for the case of the barge has been used for fueling purposes. Issuing fuels on the military fuel depot will include loading of the tankers, but often consider the fuel naval vessel with loading of the harbor barge at the pier of the war of the fuel naval vessels is also set and described in the handbook. Loading and fueling. The physical property procedure for the issuing of the burning of the fuel oil, the diesel, and fuel oil, even gasoline with the jet fuels to the harbor barges are same in the principle is involved in loading of the tank of the vessel. The formalization usually simplified on an account of a smaller quantity of the delivered, but in order to detect possible contamination, it is advisable to obtain the sample of the barge tanker of the after loading operation. Witnessing the short gauge of the shipper officer, usually the suspension of the gas, especially with the barge, with the operator with the same command with the depot. However, none of the safety precautions should be relaxed, even though the quantities that are involved are smaller. After filling and filling the pier lines with the short tank will be gauged with the sample of the thieves for the water. If the tank is reloaded with the gauging for the subsequent test will be probably witnessed by the ship officer by the representative of the otherwise gauging will be witnessed to both personnel. The supervisor should inspect ship tanks in company with the ship of the officer for the assure that they are empty and clean with the condition to be loaded prior to the JP5 fuels. The MSTS tankers and charter tankers must have the tank in which for the JP5 with loaded, stripped and dried with clean with the remove of the residual rust of the contamination moisture. Except when necessary due to the structure other operational consideration, these tanks should not be ballast prior to loading of the JP5 fuel. Loading and tanking the barges. Loading of the tank and the barges involve the same. The general serve the operations of the unloading of the obvious modification sequence of the following three important differences. Extra heads with the spilling over the board of the pier with the result of the running of the tanks over the extra head with the connecting with the vapors of the jet fuel gasoline being discharged from the ship tank's vents and the hazard incident with the tank ship discharge ballast. The fuel depot service facilitation and personnel from the service organization is designed to provide on-test fuel without particular reference for its own conveniency. To do this most effectively, however, there should be an advance notification, whether practical or particular, with a large transfer. Need for advance notice. Except in the case of the emergency depot, should be notified of the ship movement if the loading of the requirements within enough in advance to the permit of the scheduling of the shore operation. Advance notice should be indicated as following: expected time of the ship to arrival, product to be loaded, quantity to be loaded, test of the product, required amount, nature of the ballast for the to be discharged ashore, cleaning operation that must be performed, any special service with unusual requirements. Alright, 5. Your planning operation. The supervisor shall prepare a plan with the scheduling handling of the operation, make all necessary arrangements of the handling personnel, put the material with equipment in advance for the manner of the similar to the previously described for the receiving the cargo as soon as the tanker ship at the dock with the supervisor shall review the plan arrangement of the ship officer for the modification of the necessary as they agree to such modification. If possible, the player line should be filled with a sample tested was required before the arrival of the ship, and all the valves over the shoreline with the permitting with the operation should be open with except with the necessary to prevent the cross transfer, the valve of the pier house with the connection, and general safety of the fire precaution, including the patrol required. That if the plan of the operation will be verified and procedures reviewed by the shore representative, the wharfman shall then notify the ship officer for the shore readiness for the issued cargo. Notified by the ship officer for the ship that is ready to receive. The wharfman shall slowly open the pier valve at the hose connection, the pumps, the individual tanks, or the booster pumps, if used, can control the void with the excess of the pressure of the pier sample of the line with the ship tanks should be taken periodically tested during loading and operation to ensure that the product of the being was received within board of the vessel that meets specification requirements. Speed operation. When determined whether the ship to groove of the oil will receive the ship designated with the tank of the ship of the officer for the approve will follow the improve the full flow of the degree of the program previously determined in the safe for the ship. Question: the wharfman will issue the instruction of the booster pump in the house of the tank farm personnel with the standby to observe the hose pressure, the adjust for the pier valve. Necessary of the violent with the sudden increase of the flow with the objectionable surge pressure that should be avoided. Loading should then be proceeded maximum allowable available rate without delay until the time comes to the top off the ship tank with the tanks are tight. And tanks are topped off when 90% of the full and during off the top of the tank with the loading rate should be considerably reduced to avoid any of the spilling overflow, and the change of the pump ratings over that should be reported with the reasonable ship officers. Immediately see Chapter 7 for hazard loading of jet fuel. Section 7, Chapter 4. Alright, we're just working on it. I cut the tape there.